thank you everyone for attending and for the invitation so I can do the presentation, which for the last 3 years everything has been in my head only and no one to really share it. So hopefully a few things will come out. What I will be introducing today is a new branch of mathematics which I'm naming Trinity, because it relates into splitting the numbers into 3 groups and following along on that idea. What influenced me initially was Nikola Tesla work I found on a YouTube, which had number 12 that he did the chart on, and gave us idea that there is curves clockwise and curves going anti-clockwise, that there is certain numbers that play the role. So the game started. My initial take was quite out of the blue, and it related in putting prime numbers in order, and it started like this. So what I was doing was putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and consecutively writing the numbers down, and then reducing the numbers to single digits to get my extra information bit. And when I did that, there was this zigzagging line which appeared, which, okay, primes are aligned here. And not all of the numbers were primes, like some are dotted in pink as opposed to green, and these are the numbers which were multiplications of 5. And what we were told that prime numbers will have to work on their own, what I've discovered that prime numbers are necessary to that 5 and multiplications of 5s are necessary to complete the prime number functioning circuits. So without it, the numbers do not make much sense. However, when we do it in this way, starting from the linear maps, I went, okay, what about, I divided the page into 6. And again, the primes were appearing in a very consecutive order, then going down to 9, and then 12. And it was all seemed to making this amazing order. Even the numbers were realigning themselves. The primes were always like zigzagging across, so there was this connection happening. So after this stage I decided, how about instead of going in a linear fashion, we go and put the numbers around the circle. And that's where the original division happened, which was in 3. And that's where I've separated my arms also, because my initial interest in Vortex Math comes from Marco Rodin's work and his infinity symbol or doubling system. But in his system there are redundant numbers which were missing. And I thought, well, if they're missing, what happens to them? And working in our trinary system, I've discovered I can account for every number in the universe. So there is no just doubling. Every number makes sense and has got function, has got its own place to do its work. So with mapping the numbers like this, all the highlighted points are located on 3 arms. One is in green color, which will be reducing the numbers, the circuit 3, 6, 9. One which is in red and reducing the number, it will be the sequence 1, 4, 7, and a blue 1, 2, 5, 8. And I do understand those numbers are definitely number groups with definite functions. So when working with the maps, we went from 3 to 9 and then 15. So if we're adding 6 and 6 and 6 and 6, each time what's happening to prime numbers, they will alternate on each arm. When we working with 6 and multiplication of 6, so 6, 12, 18, 24, and so forth all the way, all the primes will line up. So that's why I'm happy to say I got the primes numbers in order, finally. they do become more meaningful when I go to the feather charts and start using them to show some of the aspects that they could play a role in. So that's the very basics, and another thing I'll probably use, the bottom of the chart, or even on a picture. I've realized that there is polarity going around, or the line numbers will line up. So let's say if we start on our number 1 as a negative, number 2 will be positive, 3 negative, 4 positive, so it's probably better on so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we do minus, sorry, how did I do it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy. So if 1 is negative, 2 will be positive, 3 negative, 4 positive, 5 negative, 6 positive again. So they will, each arm will have the alternating polarity. And also another thing in the system, you go always clockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and forever and ever, out and out again. When we do our division of 6, and again we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 goes back to 1, 11 to 2, 12 to 3. But if we again put our 1 as negative, 2 as positive, 3 negative, 4 positive, 5 negative, positive, we're ending up with the arms that will have the polarity line up. So that's the another difference I've acknowledged. So they can always alternate, or they can line up, but we always go around and around in a circle. So on all of those charts,
why is 2 a negative?
Pardon?
Why is 2 a negative? I thought 2 was positive.
No, you see, they change. When you divide it into 3, 2 is positive. When you divide it into 6, 2 becomes negative. So it's a new function in a division. That's the best way I can explain it. And that's why I've put them division, the top ones and the bottom ones in a different row instead of 1, 3, 6, 9 and so forth. Like I see there is 2 different functions happening.
I'll keep watching.
Yeah, okay. So that's what's happening on those charts. They all will rotate plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. The difference is the bottom ones will have minus, plus, minus, plus. This one will minus, plus, minus, plus. But it's the same principle of following the numbers 1 to 9, 10, and over again. What also I've highlighted here, which I do not understand, but which these ones I will just place here. On our 3, I join the lines between the prime numbers. And okay, now it should be better. And as you can see, the highlighted green just like that. Gives us this little zigzagging wave. So The function of it is to me unknown. It's only acknowledged at this stage. I do hope that people, once they get to play with this geometry and mathematical system, the connection of the primes will become much more meaningful. What it means, what it stands for on our even charts. If I was connecting up my prime numbers, I would be getting just straight lines. So connecting it in just one plane. But to me it looks like a spokes on a wheel. And at this stage, this is the roadmap to get into geometry. I'm gonna swap the charts over. Can leave the, okay, if you leave the ones behind them.
You keep talking.
Okay, so on this display now, I've also realized that doing divisions with prime numbers like this, we're only dealing with one triangle in rotation, which may sound a little bit odd, but that's what this series of pictures will be able to demonstrate a bit more clearly. There might be a squeezing here. So I've just connected on the same points our first triangle, then we go into 2 triangles, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm determining that inside each one we're starting to build our basic geometry. So in here we've got the triangle, we're moving into the square, pentagon, hexagon. See if I swap those from under you. We can keep extending it out. So instead of dividing the circle of 360 degrees into 1 degree increments, we're basically working here on 120 degrees and dividing it down. So our hexagon, we've got 7-sided, 8-sided, 9-sided, 10-sided. And what's interesting aspect in those pictures, it's not only that each additional triangle creates a new geometry, it also circles around itself. So if you look at the center of each chart, no matter how the numbers are changed, the circle remains the same size. So we're basically working and rotating the triangle only. It's only the triangle.
So the little, like 3D multi-dimensional engines of creation.
Well, in the next set I will be referring to 3-dimensional geometry, what I perceive this to translate into that down the track. But before we get into it, we'll show you another set of pictures which also draws the geometry. But here I've put the difference. Actually, no, I'll have to go with the whole chart, so that make more sense.
So is this a unique organisation?
It's a self-organizing system.
Yeah. So yeah, you've managed to organise numbers that are normally kind of everywhere in a nice pattern.
In a coherent flow.
And yet you're not quite sure exactly what to do with it yet, but you're saying there's no more possibilities open.
Well, there is more possibilities open. First of all, I'm only presenting to you fraction of the maps or codes as I call them, because I've realized to get our 360 degrees divided into 3, we end up with 48 maps, and now we've got close to 20 original ones in the making. So divisions, and then we can probably even start chunking it further. So 360 could be divided into half a degree or a third of a degree.
Is this when
So
you
we
might
can
start
scale it down.
putting it on a computer system?
I am hoping to meet some computer whiz that can turn this into the computer program, because it's definitely,
So
it
if
could
like-
be done as in a linear fashion, in a circular fashion, but there is a third one which is a conical fashion.
So will it go to infinity?
Yes,
So it's a bit like discovering the Mandelbrot, but in a different patterning system.
it's a more self-organizing system. When I get into the information I've picked up from Tesla, it will move it into more detail on that level. So just bear with me, I'll move through geometry first, and then the last part will be probably more exciting. So, oh gosh, it's a little bit from here to there, but oh my god. So, we're starting again from our original triangle, and on our first division, because we're dealing with 3 different functional arms, as I can probably call it at this stage, I just drawn the outline again. And what I believe that this could be the formation of our miniature tetra, and this would be a 2D projection of our octahedron. So in this way, those 2 shapes, I believe, are the most fundamental building blocks of the whole universe. And I will explain polarity on them in the second part when we go into 3-dimensional shapes. But what I've acknowledged here, that when I follow just, once we get into division of 9, I'm connecting my 3, 6, 9 circuits, which will be here 1, 2, 3. So I've got green triangle, then red and blue triangle. So when I'm making the division like this, you can still see that the green division is the one that structures geometry, and the red and the blue are a rotation of the same configuration. So,
That's because the green is of the same structure as the internal.
well, I believe the green is our switching point,
And that's the 369.
369. So that's for me, the green one is the one that I'm highlighting most often as the primary force that holds it together in a sense. So, and there is, okay, we can highlight it just by connecting our arms. And when we go down 15, 18, you can see that we can either create stars patterns, or we can create this, oh gosh, a roundish wheel pattern on the very edge. And each center now is of a different size. So when we space, and again, I'm only connecting green with green, so that's why I'm still retaining 3 colors. So our geometry basically unfolds itself on those grids. In outgoing, so it will be hexagons, and imploding, sort of going into itself.
Just like a toroidal.
It is, in a sense, a toroidal system, or spokes on a wheel. And Also with this system, it's when we get down to the bigger and bigger numbers, you can see how the density, you'd think that will be expanding with the size, but it's not necessarily so, because our 27 division is very narrow, but on 30 we're stretching out again. 27's got the small circle, 30's got the wider one. So maybe it's determining the way of our 0 point by using the numbers. That's at least what I'm sensing, that by varying the number divisions into different codes, we actually expanding and contracting the 0 point through which the numbers come through. And another way maybe to explain it was, my original thought that this is only half of the picture, because everything, if the vortex is a vortex, it will have two of them. It's never one. So if it's compatible, what I've done, it's like one arm, two arm, and three, just flattening out. That's the maps. But there is also this side, which if we put the red on top, we'll have, instead of green, it will be blue now, and red.
That's
We'll
where you
swap
get
the
your
side.
Negative and positive.
Yes,
Right.
that's why we're getting the two. So this is only part of a picture, so to speak. And to get into the full, I would have to redo the maps, each one, and change the colors in it. Okay. Now the Tesla bits, and that's the real game changer, as I believe. Let's help. He gave the clue of using number divisions, which this one got hidden, relied on multiplications of number 11 and 13. Okay, so I'll just put it in. Stay. So the pictures are varying. However, they were all created by just mapping the numbers on 11 divisions, which was 11, 22, 33, 44, and so forth, and then doing the same thing with the 13, 26, 39. So first I just mapped all those numbers on the maps. And then he told us that there is a clue, one will go clockwise, one will go anti-clockwise. Well, it matched on my original map 3. I got this picture, which kind of got me excited because it is a nice heart shape, but it shows us that prime numbers will be playing the role in our spiraling system. And intuitively, I'm coding them as one being electrical, one being magnetic. There is a third component to it, which is a combination when our multiplications of 13 and 11 become the same number. So 11 times 13, 143, and then multiplications of that. What I've also found here, that when I reduce the numbers, or alternately lined up the last digit of the full number, I'm getting the sequences. So in our 11, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 0, and 1, 2, 3, 4, it just continues forever. But on our electric one, we're getting 4, 8, 3, 7, 2, 6, 1, 5, 9, 4, 8, 3, 7, 2, 6, 1, and so forth. And here as well, so that helped me determine initially which way the scalar way would move. And I got very excited only to think, yes, this is the formula, and I got proven wrong, because on some maps we get 2 scalar waves or 3 scalar waves, so it does get a bit more complex. But just doing the original one, the numbers that you can see on the higher maps like 24, you get 143, the two are crossing over. 286, that's when the two are crossing over. So I believe our scalar wave will travel following that path. Okay? And on number 3, that's where I thought it's hard to maybe determine that it's the same curvature, but doing it very simplistically, the textures.
Oh, it's hidden.
There behind it.
Oh, okay, they're hiding just there. Thank you. So what I did, estimated roughly where the number 143 will be, which if we left it on 38, I would have to go there, there. So if I standard the scalar wave, it will kind of go from there to there to get down to this arm, which is number 7. If we reduce the numbers down, it will be way down there. But the more numbers we add in our configuration, they become tighter and tighter. So the surprise was here on the 33, which instead of crossing over by two currents meeting, they cross over into different points. So that's when the formula kind of changed. 133 is here, but 286 follows on this arm. I've calculated the next division of 429 will be there, way up. And
So what does that mean, Maggie?
well,
What did you take that to mean?
for me, okay, the first charts like from 3, 6, 9, 12, like you can see, so they build the heart shapes. But this one is almost like chopping. And when you go down to 66, you're getting similar thing. You've got this chop chop. So for me, this rearranges energy in a mega way. Positively or negatively, I cannot say, but at this stage, it doesn't feel too good. I'm much happier drawing the curves and our hearts, and when I got to number 18, which, where is the 18 now?
On the right hand side.
Far right.
Okay, I'm looking down, okay, thank you. The light was blocking it. When I got into our division of 18, that was for me how the nature grows, because if you go from the center, you've got a tiny little leaf with the bigger leaf, with the little bigger one, and a bigger one, and a bigger one. And they sort of grow just like the leaves grow, with maximum exposure to get the energy from the sun, which is our information, and to get the energy from the rain, which is also information. So that's for me, it's the way the life unfolds in nature language. Number, where was the galaxy? There is one which kind of creates a galaxy with electric circuit, but we've got also this one, which is the magnetic arm. So I would refer to those two as possibly relating to our galaxy doing its own rotation and formation. Why they don't fly out, why don't they swallow itself through the center, but up.
What I think is some of this is a little bit galactic. So when you have the polarity that goes round like a galaxy, then there's antimatter that goes the other way. But we actually don't see that.
I'll show you how it could be perceived.
And those cross points that you see
Yeah.
are going into another dimensional level. Okay, so like for instance, if you go out of your body
Yeah,
and you come back in, when you come back in, you can go through a vortex.
you do. That's
Yeah.
with those maps, I've got something that I can overlay to explain the other side, maybe. And that's exactly what you just mentioned. There is still aspects. So just take and think I've pulled back in here.
And
Yes.
it also has 0-point energy groups. as well.
That's what this probably will help. Okay, so if I start from 3, 6, okay, where is
You know when you said you didn't have a good feeling, right, about the choppy one?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be because maybe it's trying to reveal the neg entropy.
With entropy, I've got another hinge, and I will show it on a different charts again, where I've color coded it with frequencies. I may be halfway out because it seems like very important information. It makes sense to me, so you'll have to judge for yourself a little bit later on. But just what you were saying, that there is two. I've been doing. Where is my charts?
So this is
Like if this is number 9, so it's just a copy of it. What I did was to
Maggie, you want to introduce it by saying what's happening. So there's a third, you know.
it's sorry, flipping it over would give us this going out. So one will go into the 0 point and then out the other way, basically on the other side. So doing it by the overlap. But I also was playing with what if we overlap it? Well, that's our 0 again like this, just by twisting it around. Oopsie. And that was
That's
just
more or less how it goes.
no match.
Yeah, it goes to
So it had to be going from into the center and out on the other side, rotating the opposite way.
There's two fields going one way and then the other way.
Yeah.
And one's antimatter and the other one's matter. And yeah. And in a spacecraft, they have two. That shape, what's that shape? The diamond shape.
Yeah.
The points are together. One goes that way, the other goes that way. And that creates a field of anti-gravity.
Okay, I'll show you another thing which mapping things on same information but presented in a conical shape. And where are they? Another way of charting it, and I'm happy for people to bend it and fold it for themselves to see a little bit closer, but I did again the divisions, marking up the circuits, and what I realized when you kind of close it in to create a vortex, that's when it's really start making sense.
And then where those nodes cross is where you can go into another dimension.
Possibly too. And another thing I've realized too, that drawing it on a diagram like this, we're distorting it slightly, because the one shouldn't be on this model, one would be below here. So it's almost one is coming from the other side. So if you connect it in the right way, it will be just one to continually going up. Numbers will spiral as opposed to be arranged in a ring form. And I believe that's the ultimate connection.
Yeah,
This is just a simplified version.
yeah.
So you're
That-
concluding that the shapes that you're forming now are the true numbers lining up with what you're finished?
That's how things really exist.
Okay.
Maggie, can you just talk about the green line there for a minute? There's the overlay that you wanted.
Okay, well, the green line again, that's the scalar wave I've been placing. So, most of them work. As I said, it's just this curve. It will be tighter curve or a longer curve depending which division we look at. The more numbers, the tighter the curve. the less numbers, of course, the curve becomes bigger.
So this is why the scalar waves be able to coexist.
Connects the two, I
Yeah.
believe. That's the meeting point of two.
Yeah.
It's not its own, like on a caduceus, when I talked with Christina again, she said there is 3 circuits. And the interaction of the 3 makes us who we are, which is full energy expression. We can't rely just on one alone.
What does scalar, sorry about my ignorance, what does a scalar wave mean, scalar?
Well, okay, the way it presented itself to me in a vision, if you can call it a universal serpent, an energy coming in. Well, I've had one experience like this, and that's what it feels like.
A bit like Kundalini maybe.
Yeah, another way within our bodies, yes.
Yeah, pyramid energy is scalar energy.
Yes, because it's within the vortex, you always find scalar
Like
energy.
The American Indians, when they had the smokes and they produced the circles,
Yeah,
that's scalar. In your finger, that's scalar energy, that's why you can heal.
Hedwig
Because
Hopner,
this-
how do you say?
All the lines are scalar, so that's why you can actually heal someone.
Agnihotra, how do you pronounce it again?
so if anyone wants to play, I'll leave them further down. And I just mentioned one point that on higher maps, when it stops making sense, like going down to 27, when you chart it in this way, it starts making sense
Yeah.
much more clearly again. Why it's happening, why all those different divisions. And again, when we got to number 72, my intuition told me that's our eye, left and right eye. And when I go to 144, that would be maybe our pineal connection. And again, you know, the scalar wave could be an optic nerve which connects 1 and 2, and that's the information.
Well, when you've got to a certain level, you actually produce a circle around your head this way,
Halo.
which is a halo, which is the interface. That not everybody has it, but some people do. I have actually seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
This box is the gold around like that. The scalar is on a slight angle, but it's a very, very fine gold rim right around. And that locks you into some of this stuff.
So as I was hoping people will be making connections like that, this is just maps.
So we might
That
just,
actually takes you to another force, which is like another, I think it's called a G force, that we really don't know a lot about, but it's like monatomic, but monatomic on a vibrational level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one thing which kind of struck to me, we're talking about the speed that something needs to travel to. And what I'm acknowledging here, you don't need the speed because it's
No.
already connected. So it's
Yeah,
there and
everything's
here and
connected,
everywhere
yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a bit like push and pull,
And we're trying to split things apart, like this is separate, and this is kind of presenting to me now it's all interconnected.
With what you've just said then, how does that fit into so-called non-science, quantum mechanics and all that? Are you saying that it's proving it or disproving it?
Well, I believe what's being taught, and that's through all the research I try to find and learn about things, when everyone's got a different idea about it. So there is no congruency in our science to start with. If we had congruency, then we can test it, retest it, prove it, disprove it. But it seems to me like everyone is trying to prove something totally different.
But your numbers are
And-
showing accuracy.
And my numbers are actually doing it for themselves, so I don't have to do it. The numbers do it. It's for us to understand the language that the numbers give us and to chart information appropriately. Tesla left another chart, which is a star, which was not connected like I did it precisely. His star connection is, to my mind, at this stage, incoherent. I cannot grasp it. But there is another language embedded in it, okay, which I don't have for you to present. I'm just mentioning if someone wants to look into it.
It's like the theory of relativity. It's, if you look at also photons are a wave of a particle, and when one changes, if the photon is split,
Yeah,
then the information is instantaneously, when one part of the photon has information, the other part has it at exactly the same time, and it could be thousands of miles away.
yeah,
It's instant like that.
That's cool.
And another
Spooky
thing which
action.
I'm acknowledging about the numbers in those charts, but
Yeah.
the crossing point of the two together is definite. We can chart it like that's very easy. But there is also times when both will be standing next to one another, like one here, one there. It's, oh gosh, which ones? We've got this one here, like next to another. And when they touch, sort of speak, I believe that's an information package of its own.
Yeah. But
It's a bit like synapses in the brain when they connect.
Pardon?
Maybe like, I visualise it like your synapses connecting in the brain, how circuits join. And then you get a spark and you're more prone to...
Which was the number 24 hours in a day, and it kind of went into the chart 24, which I'm looking. Oh, where is our
24 with that clear thing on top.
Yes, that's why it's obscuring again. Okay. So when we open up the 24, there is two things I've acknowledged. One is that two north and south pole polarity change of our planet when it flips. Well, that kind of, to me, would indicate that the polarity shift would be happening on those 2 points of crossing two currents, or right through the center, but more likely my sensing is maybe up here on the primes. When we go to the chart 36, which is this one, this to me related intuitively to the energy of the sun grid. We're going up in numbers, and sun seems to have like 11-year cycles in its eruptions of plasma, and it seems to be like in 3 different points. One of the YouTubes was kind of referring to it. So again, I can see this eruption happening in a different equations. And also on 36, and you'll probably have to stand down closer later on, when I look at the top arm of the 369 circuit, this is the most clear indication to me how the music frequencies will progress. And when you look at the numbers, you'll recognize it from the proper tuning as opposed to inappropriate tuning, which we are dealing with. 440, I believe, is distorting our center. So we're not accessing the full information, and our world, I believe, has been hijacked for a long time now, and we've lost touch with our information fields. So whoever is into music, I would really bring this point, retune to the old frequencies. The old cultures knew what they were doing. Primitive cultures intuitively probably did it. But we will be much better off.
432 is that? Is it
432, yeah.
And 528.
Okay, so I'll just read them out. I've got 36, which we're starting from, 72, 108, very famous numbers again, 144, 180, 216, 252, 288, and you'll find 342 on that one going up. So our scaling in music, I believe. And again, we can maybe look for musical skills in all of them, because the top arm of our 369 seems to contain different fractions but of the same breakup. I'm not sure about those. They could be maybe sub-frequencies relating to a different levels. A lot of frequencies we cannot hear, but they still exist and they still
That's
are part of creation.
That's another
Sorry.
point to make about music, because of the digitisation of music. The frequency.
Analog again, yeah, very good
you gotta-
point.
Yeah, because they just cut out the higher digital ranges because they just use up. Ever wondered why an MP3 fits on a? You can get 4 LPs onto one analog, because we're losing all of those higher frequencies.
Yes. And we're not I believe like, you know, sound should be like this, it shouldn't be dots.
Yeah.
Simple.
Well,
Like-
anyway, it'll make live music continue to be popular.
Live music appreciated as much as possible, and I think the educational system stopped classes with music. My generation, we had to play the flute and do all sorts of
We had
stuff.
singing, we had dancing.
That's it.
Yes.
By
We had
kindergarten,
logic.
I was learning English in those days, so it's.
Maggie, you're not saying that the octave is wrong, the octave starting with middle C. You're not saying that's
Tuning that we do on the C whenever it's 440 or 432 changes the language.
Semitone, half a semitone lower it should be. Similar, that's a wrong sound.
So if, let's say 432 would be up here, 440 would be somewhere there, like skewed. So it just,
There's a difference between harmonic and not harmonic.
and not harmonic.
Harmonic and
I believe we're very much being pushed to be disharmonious
Absolutely.
on any possible level.
It all affect your signals. It all affects your signals.
They had a solfeggio scale,
Yeah.
which the Catholic Church altered because of the power of it.
Well, I believe I watched one very interesting YouTube too, which I think it was one of the Pollard YouTube, but he had experience in one of the cathedrals where they played classical music at the right time of the year with alignments of the stars in the right place, but his experience of it, and he said everyone that was in that hall was so damn charged that they were charged for a few days afterwards. So the whole hall was vibrating, it was the building vibrating, it was not just the
They
instrument.
built the building with the golden mean, really.
They did, and initially it was to uplift us. I think the whole Christianity and whole religion system hijacked us.
The Gregorian chant, Gregorian chant,
Yes,
that fills the pillar. the sound.
yes, that would
so
So
what
if
about
you don't play that will take you away.
take you higher.
Yeah.
That's what's supposed to do.
gamelan? It's tuned to a completely different scale, and it's supposed to activate the astral body to a degree. The gamelan, the Balinese gamelan.
I'm not familiar on that one. I understand that if you
has a
do
different
like a
scale.
ball, crystal balls, and you do just around and around and around. Once I've had this experience when someone was playing in a room, and it was spooky because the ball was being played up there and lying on the floor here. I could feel the music going around and around in my head. Or having a didgeridoo played on top of myself, I could feel that vibration resonating within my body. So it was not external experience of hearing, it was the full body experience, if it kind of makes sense.
The Navajo flutes are handmade now in Mullumbimby music shop, and the tuned in 432. Anyone's interested in buying a flute to start.
Okay, there is also some on internet selling the chimes, which you have to go bang and you get which is tuned into 432. But I think they're just so expensive. I mean, it should be something that everyone should be able to manifest, or much more
You like that
available.
one?
Excuse me, this gentleman.
Yes, sorry.
I'm a retired farmer, so I'm at a big disadvantage and I've got no musical talent. My daughter has,
Yeah.
but I haven't. So what you seem to be saying is that with what you're learning here,
Yes.
we've been dumbed down because of missing out on some
On
frequencies
frequency.
in the music.
And I
Can we
believe,
fix it though? That's the thing I'm interested in.
well, if fixing it will be just, oh gosh, my own personal life, I've chucked all the radio and all the TV out. I don't want a crap.
So
Just
what's the
saying
good
no
thing?
to it
What
and
do you
choosing
replace
what you
it with?
want, maybe buy old record
Go back to the
and
60s
play the
music.
music when it was still music.
Some bands tune their guitars to the other frequencies.
Apparently
Not
there is
playing
few
that,
musicians
So if we
creating.
listen to those good ones, it
Yes.
would work.
Yeah.
What you're
But
saying.
you need to listen to them on analog.
That's what I mean, old-fashioned equipment.
I do it with a guitar.
Thanks for that.
You can get an app for your phone that converts it too.
And I also believe that understanding our how geometry works, we can help the land, because in the past they used to put, metal rods, copper rod, iron rod, and you got the marshes, which become the most fertile land. So we can activate or deactivate certain frequencies within the earth itself. So we won't need pesticides and all of that crap on top of us. We can modulate the interaction of elements by understanding what the heck we're doing. So by building the beds that are not in line, everything has to be one and squared. And I'm saying, well, nature is not like this. And we are almost forced by our culture and immersed in it. We live in square buildings. My intuitive thing and my visionary pictures, which I'm full of too, when I see the worlds that are harmonious, and I've been there many times, and I believe I brought this information partly from that future, when we are all coherent, awake, and loving, and living our life to the fullest with no sickness or disease. So that's my hope, that we will get there. If I can see it, it must manifest somewhere in time, somewhere in space. It's possible. We do not have to rely on dual system of opposites. And that's what I hope, that on a mental level, trying at the system will help free ourselves from this dual thinking. Because it's a paradigm in the mind that we need to change, I believe, very much so. That old, Trinity that comes from some religious teachings, well, there were grains of truth in all of this, but hijacked by whoever was in power.
Fifth dimension is no duality.
Well, according to this, duality is only a function that is needed to progress things forward, but not actually. Another way duality could be useful, but in a different form, and I'll get into the patterns that we've got energies, let's say, that will promote life from zero to its blossoming, but then things have to go back and die down. So I believe those two frequencies are built in within the universe. So it will be life-giving and life-taking, in a most simple term. But to have a look at it, I'll show you the pictures that are still not fully finished, but I've been just grappling with the ideas. And another set.
I'll take that away.
Anyway, never mind, it's been like that. I'm wondering what the deal was, and everyone's still 10 years later, still working out. And they say the I can't. Mental arithmetic is never my thing. Visions are good. And then reading things about physics, and then I turn them into art. Because there's always bits and pieces. No, I do. Okay. Let's come back to order.
Okay, so in this section I'm breaking up another information pattern, which what I'm doing here, first of all, I've put prime numbers and adjusted it into 5 groups. So I've got 1, 11, 31, 41, 61, 71, and to me, when I started charting it in the original first grid of 3, I tried to adjust the wave, which I just picked up from the book, into the length of the wave that would be kind of created by connecting the numbers. So if I kept going with 7s in blue, the line got a little bit longer than, especially when I'm going from the origin. So that's first one, that's second one, Then you've got the third one. Then surprisingly 5 comes from the opposite direction, and then there is a yellow one. But this kind of seemed like only part of the information, so I followed it by connecting all of the numbers. And that's when I arrived with this, which I'm calling a possible atrophy waves. And the way my brain was working it out, I explain on number 6, which is I visualize that our frequencies are coming from above, but we're going down into the earth. So if information, life-giving information that we rely on comes from above, I've given them this correlation. But then to choose the color for the ascending or atrophy frequencies, I chose to follow, like looking at the tree, which goes from the yellowing to oranges to browns to grays through your modes and back into the black. So this is my logic only. It's not proven scientifically by any means, but following it in this order, this new language opened up. So if I just did our prime numbers, I've ended up on a 9 grid, like they all change again. And it all was spiraling out, but never interfering with one another. And all I'm doing here is a different form of following, as I explained. I'm looking at literally the last digit. I'm not even looking anymore at full numbers. So I look at 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and that's what I've started to charting when I got to bigger numbers. Okay, and then I look for 7, 7, 7 ending, and so forth. And then I found that to do this chart properly, I can add complementary numbers. Again, that will follow on the same color sequence. So the more complex the maps became, it seems like there is no redundancy. You have to incorporate all of it, and that seemed to have the best logic for me. So here I've put the possible atrophy waves, which just complement. So when we do buff waves on the 9, well, again, they don't interfere, they kind of fit in between. On number 12, we're getting this division, which is almost like a double of that. Number 15 comes surprise because they go in a squiggly line. They don't circle at all, there is no rotation. 15, 18, we're back to the rotation, which is similar to the 9. But also on 18, I've looked at the different mapping of connecting my 1s or 7s. That if I just do this spiral, so it will be from here to there. But also if I would connect the numbers across, so higher spiral arm that's outer to the lower, so from here to there. And when I did that, that to me looks like a pattern of shell. Little divisions, so you've got your little one here, and then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger, and progressively goes out. So again, for me, that looks a little bit like a life pattern. 21 is surprising because the colors change the spin. The direction is reversed. So as I said, I thought there were rules and it would be so easy, but it's not, because each map, it's got its own info. On 21, 24, I didn't finish all the color coding, but I've realized, okay, I've been doing my arms, which works the easiest, like to create the wave. But on some pictures, I realized that I can go in both directions. So again, it looks to me like a pattern for life, something unfolding.
It's like a rose.
Like a, thank you. 36 predominantly seems to spiral, but if I wanted to go the opposite way, it would also be possible go like this. Okay, so that could be on what you were talking before on the other side, like having the two together instead of just one way. The same, okay, 36, 33 goes back to going around this way, and the 30 is the most odd one of them all, because the numbers, they squiggle here, and here they just line up into straight rays of light. So that's a little bit tricky. The meaning of it, it's hard to decipher. On number 72, 66, 144, again, I've drawn what it felt most natural to me, but if I wanted to go in the opposite direction, I could draw the arm and go from here, there. So it will be much slower wave, much different curvature. But you see, when I'm doing it just like this, they all have the same curvature, like there is this logic to it. So which one is most correct at the moment? Do we need both of them? One, whenever it's left-hand side, right-hand side. On some of them, it's very definite. On some, we need more time to probing. And sometimes I just use the pendulum and ask questions, but I don't have the time to even check the stuff yet.
Have you had time to draw all this?
Yes.
Well, that's about a month work, so I've neglected the garden and everything. It was, I can see it, so I'm bang, and next and
Number
next.
12 reminds me of the Templar Cross.
Yeah,
What was the numbers of that one?
that's the Templar's Clause, that's on number 12.
Yeah, well, what was the sequence for that one?
Code 4, Trinity.
What do you mean sequence?
I
When you
don't
match them, when you match the lines, the sequence?
Okay, well, what I did here, let's see, maybe have a closer look. It's from the distance, absolutely. I'm running here just by the last digit, not simplifying it, not modifying it, just knowing that there is 1 and it will be 11 and it will be 21, so I'm discarding 2. I'm following on ones, and that's when this opens up. So no one has stopped me, it was just this spontaneous idea, and I could see there is a logic in it. And that's what I said. Originally everyone was saying prime numbers work on their own, and I said no, they can't. You need your 5s, and you need sum of 7s multiplications as well, and that's what Tesla was alluding to. And that's why we couldn't figure it out. There is no order, they are irrational. Why they not? They're very rational if we understand where to place them. So, okay, here I did another shortcut. And what I mean by that, I've turned it into a simplified sequence by just now looking at 1, 11, 31, 41, 61, 71, and so forth. And when we reduce it down to the single digits, we are arriving at 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. So it creates its own sequences as well. And some people will be working with those specific frequencies, I believe. And the numbers which are complementary, which are listed below on the graph you have, which was our 21, 51, and 81, well, it's always 3, 6, 9 circuit. So the graph on this side will have 3, 6, 9s in different combinations. Up here, so we've got different combinations, but it's always 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. So it's a language which can be tailored to different niches, I guess, of sciences. The way I look at the circuits, probably that's from the first one, that 3, 6, 9, that's one triangle, as I explained, 1, 4, 7, it was another triangle, and 2, 5, 8, a third one. So that's how they realign themselves to form this, and now all the numbers are accounted for, there is no redundancy. So for me, I'm sensing that the universe has got both entropy and life built into it, and the interaction of the two is what happens in the living systems, I guess, or manifest realities. And another way, which I'll probably won't go into, but I'll leave the charts out. I've got few charts just with the reduced numbers, so there is no real numbers, but only reduced numbers. And if anyone working with toroidal fields maybe, or other applications, maybe that would be useful information for this particular subject matter. But these are still kind of guesses and exploration. Where is it heading and how to apply it? That's for me the most thing. I want to know which chakra is which. I want to know how to tune something in and put in front of the body for the body to accept the information exchange. And one way, you've mentioned the template, the people, they do it by using sacred geometry and doing kinesiology testing and seeing what's missing in our energy grid. So a similar function I can see in this form one day. That we understand it, we get it developed and utilize it to everyday applications for the land, for the health, for the animals, for stop the chemtrails and all the buggers, clean up the environment. So that's my big hopes that one day we will be a bit wiser. And
Do you think any of these relate to those platonic solid things that, like you said, the foundation of the building blocks?
okay, well, that's what I will get next. What I've been discovering step by step, and I kind of unpack this because it will probably need features or tables, that there is actually two building blocks, and it's the tetrahedron and octahedron. And they create, well, the deca. That's got nothing of the deca, it's just octahedron. And again, what I believe they've done for us, when we look at octahedron, the way it's pictured on 2D projection, I see it as a double pyramid. That's my instant thing. But most people see it as a different object almost, I'm calling it. So for me, it's one thing which depends which way you turn it, you get different projection of geometry, and it triggers something different in the mind. But I will explain how they, with polarities, just come together and form what you might recognize as the patterns in life. And there is another aspect in this part. I've found quite a number of YouTube relating to cubo-octahedron and everything that could be known about it. I've looked and searched. But I've come across a shape which initially was called Johnson solid number 27, orthobicupola, or anti or twisted cubo-octahedron, which none of it made sense to me. But when I've created that form, it's necessary to create certain energetical grids. Without it, we're missing a hell of a lot.
What were the two?
Cubo-octahedron,
Yeah.
and what I'm calling now also polarized cubo-octahedron. Initially in my YouTubes I was calling it anti-cubo-octahedron. But simply put, that's a little cubo-octahedron. When you split it in half in the center, you can rotate them so it will be either square and triangle going alternately, but it could be also triangle on top of triangle and square on top of a square, and that's the missing element which we need to understand much more.
They also have the hypercube.
A hypercube, which is a different thing again. I will explain what anti-cubo-octahedron does on its own, and octahedral channels, which is something I believe we need to start exploring. And octahedral channels, where are you? A little groover like this. So if you stack octahedrons on top of another and remove top and bottom from each one, you get this little door you can see through. And what's interesting measuring it with pendulum, it displays two vortices intermingling with one another, so you get clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise. So you get this division of fields. Okay, so first maybe I start from the beginning. Originally, I created truncated tetrahedron and truncated octahedron as opposed to fully enclosed ones. The idea was, because I was following Marco Rodin's map, division on 3, it was a hexagonal wall. So I wanted to know what hexagonal walls will build in 3 dimensions. And hexagonal walls gave me truncated tetra and truncated octa. Okay, so then what I did, I've got the truncation points open, like cut with the scissors. My first model were made out of paper. I poked some of those pipes, cleaner pipes, through my holes, and I ended up with the grids like this. So my octahedron in the center's got 3 points going from each direction. And what I also discovered, that if you take 2 tetras and join them together, you end up with this. We're ending up creating octahedron inside. So octahedron, I'm saying it's not separate form, it's a combination of 2 tetra coming together. So that was the initial thing, which was, okay, something is different. But when I did also used truncated tetrahedron and octahedron, I've got truncated octa inside with my tetras outside. When you complete it fully and add another octa, 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 tetra, tetra, that's your cubo-octahedron inside, enclosed. So in enclosing cubo-octahedrons by interactivity between tetra-octa. So cubo-octahedron has got its own.
What's the reason for creating that on the inside? Is that to make it solid, or?
It just wanted to go that way when I did the sticks. I've created it. So if you build it around and around and around, my big model is like this. You go back to tetrahedron, extra large. So it morphs and morphs and morphs. This is a first. I need 2 more additions of my puzzle pieces to create a full tetra back again. So working with this, when I discovered my cubo-octahedrons exist in the spaces between of tetra and octa when we truncate them, I've ended up, okay, that's our cubo-octa and polarized octa. And those 2 models work on its own, but they also love working together. And that's when the new game starts. On its own, I'm sorry about the colors, but in the beginning it was quite colorful. We've got only polarized cubo-octahedron, and what we're creating inside is this duvet. So we're back again to tetras. But there is another little game which you just have to be patient for a moment, because it's quite a few pieces and I need to get to them first. Oops. Okay, our cubo-octahedrons and anti this is just polarized cubo-octagon. We can create pentagon. And that's what's inside. And we're also getting our octas, half of our pyramids on the outside. So interaction of octa and tetra do exist. Now this is another model using only polarized one, and instead of 1 channel we can now get 3 channels. But again, what I'm creating here, also on this one, it's one way and the other, so one way and the other. And that's when polarity comes into it. That will be the last thing I'll mark. So between cuba octa, we can go into those shapes. So again, triangulations on that level. And this one's got the mixture of green cuba octas and white and blue polarized one on the edges. And this one encloses double octahedron in the center, and I think this model I left, so it opens up. So instead of one, we've got two of them now. And by building around this model, that's what we'll end up with, doubles all around growing out. But it's also very concrete, like 3, 6, 9, 12, all those numbers are going back here into this grid. And let's see what was the most interesting part, but
Toy box.
toy box. Oh, tell me, and I've got. My place is 7 by 7, and most of it is.
I want to take a photo of all those things on the table.
Okay, now let's really see how things transform.
So Mag,
Yeah.
I have two ideas that with all these things that you're making, one I can see them in the physics department of universities, and the other one in National Geographic box for kids and adults alike.
There is one mathematician, I hope he still exists, in Australia. He called himself the ambassador of maths. I've heard one of his interviews that he got challenged by a Polish mathematician years in the past. Well, I come from Poland. I'm gonna go and talk to this dude and say, please, can you take it into the educational department? That would be your challenge.
And if you know how you can make them come apart, you use Velcro, if maybe turn them magnetic, I don't know the cost.
Look, my dream is, and anyone that is business-like oriented, that you may know that for yourself, to go into hemp shapes, 3D printed sacred geometry, so children can do it for themselves. Because Lego is just dumbing them down.
So I need to win the lottery.
Well, I believe right people. Okay, another paradigm that came from this. That in the past we believed that it's up to an individual to change the world. I'm saying we need trilateral commission. Why? In threes. We need to come into groups to be able to shift things. Otherwise, we are just. It's me, it's mine, I'm better. Oh no, you're wrong, you're not. We need to inspire one another and assist in transformation of the planet. It won't happen by thinking about it. So the more people can have, like your gift could be, creative art. We can get the triangular grids for every news agent, for every child to have available. So one thing I realized, I cannot patent any of this, and it's not for me to make money from it per se. However, there is a number of things that could be done, and that could be money bringing.
What are you writing your book?
Well, I've got 2 books that I'm supposed to do. One which would be detailing this, some of it is just in a web page format, just with pictures, photographs. But I haven't sat down and added enough dialogue to put it together yet. I've started making YouTubes, and 2 years down the track, hardly anyone watched it. I got few good comments, few people excited, but it's just being ignored. And I try to also approach few people that call themselves, a guru of sciences, and they don't want to know you. So it is a bit of a lonely journey, and you just have to hope you meet the right people and influence the right, change and attitude somewhere along the line, and people will pick up and grow and grow and grow, because it's not one's life's person work, it needs many. We need to start coming together. That's my very deep feeling.
What about setting up a course of study yourself?
Well, that's what I thought internet, the YouTube would do, you know. It's free, it's study, but then I hope, you know, if I link with people like Nassim or, you know, Dan Winters, they are well known, so they could channel the information. But I've realized that because they got set up on their own way of understanding, this is again something that will throw them out of their comfort box possibly. Because acknowledging only, you know, this is this and this is how it is, and it will have to rely on this. I'm saying, well,
There's more.
it's well presented, which I'm not a good presenter, but it's missing in down to earth. Why, if we've been taught all of this, why haven't nothing changed over the last 30 years or 40 years?
And what is your website?
I'll write it down on a board when we finish.
And I'll send
Oh, okay.
stuff to Bruce Lipton.
Oh, okay, you're welcome too, but so far I've been ignored, so I'm just focusing on what I can and hoping the time will come, I meet the right people, something will change. I hope it's not wasted
Can I ask
time.
about making those? How did you make those? Did you do 3D printing or?
No. I'm fortunate to have two people that have backed me up. One is a person in our Drake Center where I live, which is a computer assistant. I'm just about computer illiterate. I'll try to keep the thing out as much. And another one, I've met someone in Lismore who is a professional architect in 3D, got 3D printers in his office, was excited as a child about sacred geometry. This crazy woman comes in and asks him, can you please do this? And he's been 3D printing for me, anything I've told him to.
It's 3D printed. The 3D printed.
So,
The 3D printed.
well, I get my pieces printed and then I assemble whatever just comes naturally. But generally it's like, oh, I want a few of them, and then, oh, can I have some more, and can I have some more, because I think, you know, the limit will be just very simple, but it just like this, like my initial set, I thought I got it all, and it was only 10 that I've created. And then all of a sudden it's 22. But I stepped away from the subject for a few months, and my initial pieces were all very different colors. And with that I tried to make a photo gallery, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get, for even my own satisfaction, a congruent logic. So I went to 3D printer guy and said, can we please go to colors? I don't want any other colors. And when I reduced it down to 2, extra models just sprang to life. So it was this contrasting, which I've missed. But what came up that if I mix cube octahedrons with polarized ones, we're going from totally white, let's say that's cube octahedron, that's polarized one. And all the 22 models contain inside octahedron. So that's what joins them. This one, some of the shapes can be built out and expanded. Some, with everything I've tried, seem to be very limited in how I can expand it. So it has got its limitations, some of those models. So one thing that is happening, and just by removing one white block and swapping it with the blue one, let's say. And I'll have to get them in order just to present it. Here we are. So just removed one and replace it with 2. And if I do it and keep following around, I can have 1, then have 2 blue ones, then have 3 blue ones, then have half and half, 4 and 4. So I can create this transformation of, I think, energy.
Just getting back to making a lot of this relative to where we are, like in the third dimension or nature. Nearly all the shapes, like for instance, the cubic shape is in the minerals which are like
Pyrite.
And the octahedron shape is the fluoride. because in nature, all the molecules line up
Yeah.
to form those shapes.
Yes.
So when you're actually working with stone, you work with the shape, the grain, and with diamonds, for instance, cubic, you actually you cleave. You cleave the stone because that is how the molecular structure is arranged. So all of these shapes are in stone, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's fairly simple, but just in case people who don't know.
And that's probably why, geometry was used for healing purposes. And geometry, like the crystals, I mean, in the future I've been envisaging everything runs on crystals. We don't use computers like today with the chips, with the boxes. It's all crystalline. Crystal balls, different shapes of it. But that's where the information is contained.
Yeah. And then there's platonic solids, so there's 5 shapes. They can be all in one shape.
Well, as I said, everything is in a sphere. I mean, that's what joins them together. But what I find very interesting is the interactivity of those shapes, which I'll just quickly try to arrange them so you can have a bit better appreciation what's here and move into smaller one, which is, I went back to front. Truncated stuff gave me this stuff and I'm going back to octahedra and tetra, but without truncation.
Do they all contain the octahedra inside?
Yes.
All of them?
All of them, and that's what I mean. Like if I split them in half, that's what would they look like. And that's when I've started playing with plus minus to show the polarization. Why would they stick? Why would they want to work together? And that's when it started making sense that if I'll mark those things correctly, they start giving me, I'll just keep one, my little octas polarization. And the octas polarization was compatible with my tetra polarization. So if I'm going from this all the way through that and out, or if I'm going from out to in, nothing changes in polarization. I'll explain it a bit more. I'll do some handwork if you'd like later on. So, and everything on those models, like I like my 4 when you get your triangulation if you don't looking at it from the square point. So it's our perception, how we see the object from which angle, which it's what's it, one thing or the other. Okay, so we've got free. Okay, getting closer than half. Okay, we can. Okay, so we've got one with 1, 1 with 2 on top and bottom. Come on. Sorry guys, I thought.
What did you say the white and blue represent?
Okay, white is cubo-octahedron, blue is twisted cubo-octahedron or polarized cubo-octahedron. Okay, we've got our 3 finally, and we've got half and half, and then going in reverse. So I won't pull all the models out, but you can examine it for yourself down the track. So okay, in the center I had our octahedron, so I thought, what if I get my octahedrons and play with them? So the first one was just using the channels, like the first blue one, so you can see through them. And what I've realized that in the center and on the sides, well, what fits with octahedron, it's tetra again, but we work in double tetras or pyramidal tetras. So okay, that was one arrangement. Then I thought, what else could be happening? Well, we can cut our tetras and create this array, which I don't know if you can see, but one will rotate this way, the other will rotate that way. We've got each channel directed to come out on a slightly different angle than the top or the bottom one. Then there is 1, 2, just this one, which is similar thing is happening except they are just channels. And when I did this one, I realized, okay, I've got tiny little spaces left. Well, what does that build in? A little triangle, a little mini tetras. So one interacts with the other no matter how I play. So okay, now going to tetra octa. The surprise was that by just connecting the octahedrons together, I ended up with the deca. Slightly indented, but if I would fill it up with the half pyramids from tetra, it closes it. So working along this line like that, sort of, don't know if I'm demonstrating it well, these are doubles. So then I thought, what tetras alone could do, and that looks to me like a little starfish. Then I went along what? Pentagon again. How the pentagons come through, and that was our octahedron, which again interacts with tetrahedron. But we're talking about the pyramidal ones, so double ones. And then F, which one was it? Oh, this one that could look like my imagination, seed pod. 5 divisions going in a dodeca.
There she goes.
So, surprises and surprises. And then there was another last bit which was like twisted again, going to octa, tetra, 2 of the same assemblies. When I join them together, oopsie. There is 2 ways to join in. One when our yellow triangles line up, but if I switch it over, well, back to octahedron. So one does not exist without the other, that's my gut feeling. So 3 and 6 are the building blocks, as I call it, of everything else. Oh, and there was another one, this dover, which can be expanded again just by using octahedron, and it creates quasi-octahedron, if it makes sense. So another layer of it gives us additional geometry. And again, if I break it in half, oopsie. That's what we are working with. Octatetra. Just that's like we almost have to work together. And and that was another little idea of creating dodeca shape or pentagons. You need the 2 to competitively complete the full surface. So if anyone would like questions, probably by now we can just use reminder over time.
Okay, how do you then tie this in with the basic sacred geometry, like the Vesica Pisces, the fruit of life, the flower of life?
Well, the Vesica Pisces
the golden mean ratio,
in 3-dimensional geometry will be our double tetra, or that's what I would associate it with.
So again, what would you?
Well, double tetrahedral pyramid would be association of vesica piscis.
Okay.
It's, if you could make a round
Yes.
shape,
Yeah,
that's what I see it in. And there is one model which I didn't manage to pick up, but when I was trying to give the name to anti-cubo-octahedron or twisted cubo-octahedron, the polarized octahedron made most sense, and I've determined it with pendulum, and I can do a bit of a pendulum demonstration if you'd like to maybe help to understand it further. But when I twisted cubo-octahedron to become this anti-cubo-octahedron, the internal grid work of my pipes was not like this. It's different. It's got different alignment. So this only shows you on the change on the outside, but not the change within. And I'm sorry I didn't grab the model, but the person would have had to come out to the Lismore to deliver it, and my calculator flagged as things went wrong. Couldn't do it.
But that still has structure.
It still has structure, but it's got different structures. So if you can imagine my top triangle and bottom triangle in polarized cubo-octahedron are facing in the same direction. So let's say from your point of view it will be going up. So when I twist it, it goes up. So the point between them would be slightly different, I believe. If when I was connecting my pipes, instead of getting this, all my lines were straight. And in this model, they're getting kind of off skewed. Well, people are familiar with solid form, so you've got all the walls. When you break it down into what energy patterns are within, that's the way that helps my mind to work it out.
Some of this too you can relate to the heart.
Actually, the heart one, when you mentioned, I would suggest for people, if no one has come across yet, Frank and his new geometry called chestahedron.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's heart.
The geometry.
Yes.
Because if you want, as you get, if you're not well,
Mhm.
the geometry of your heart turns into a cube. Because
Yeah.
But if you want to follow it up, it's like a pyramid because it's like fire. So that fires the heart up.
Yeah.
So you do something creative in order to, so that you're not going to the earth, which is dying basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is very interesting. Yeah.
Well, that was another shape which I thought that's interesting that
Yeah,
someone
it is.
broke it up. And again, the way he was working up, if you
Yeah.
remember, it was two
Yeah,
circles
very good,
joined
yeah.
together and then
Yeah.
twisted around, and you get one winding this way and the other winding the other way. There is no pump in the heart. And again, that's misconception within, like, we believe we've got the pump. Mechanical heart, it's a
Well,
pump.
there's some
But organic one, it's not a pump, never has
So
been.
there's some scientists really that relatively recently published a paper showing that it's impossible for the heart to pump the blood around the body
Well,
in the manner that we've been.
I've heard that.
yeah.
To believe.
Yeah, it would have to be. I don't know. I forget how big, but it's quite large.
So what's your take? How is it working? I mean, I can feel it's getting excited now, right? But the thing is, it's pumping.
Okay.
With what you just said then, how
Watch
does it work
Frank's YouTube's on chestahedron, and he also goes a little bit into, when you go into ancient architectures and you've got certain degrees on your, historical ruins. It's all in golden mean proportions and this and that. Well,
What's his name again?
Frank Chester, it's an inventor of this particular shape.
Chester.
Frenches.
But what he did
Geometry.
two circles on the paper. he did a groove going down to the center. He connected the two pieces together on a cut shape, and then he started to twist and wind. And then when you draw the lines, you can see one dip and then reversing down.
So all this spiraling and the holes or creating channels is actually what you're saying Frank has found, that's actually what the heart's doing.
The heart is actually a double vortex. Well, it's got two negative and sort of positive spin.
Are you going to talk about the hypercube?
Oh, with the hypercube.
Yeah, John Dee's work.
Yeah. Thank you. I've listened to something about the hypercube and I've watched a few YouTubes.
Well, what is important about it
Mm-hmm.
for our age now, and it came from the language of the angels, from John Dee's work, and they worked out this language of the angels, and they from that they developed the hypercube, which is the inside and the outside of the sun.
I know what it looks like, in 3D.
Yeah. So that's for now. The language of the angels is where we are now. It's a fifth dimension stuff.
Well, I don't know which dimension we'll be at when we totally change the paradigm of life.
Yeah.
But I've seen the point, as I mentioned before, where there is no competition, there is no money, there is no hierarchies. And we tune into nature, we talk to each plant to understand it on a biological, interactive way.
What it is, like every planet is like a being.
It's a being, it's an entity.
Yeah. And there are people who can tune in to the beings, and they can maintain conversation and gain knowledge through the beings, or through your higher genius, or through your guardian angel.
Well, I believe that living in the age of a lot of, what I would call it, it's just information.
Yeah.
But information doesn't mean the truth, the wisdom, and all of those aspects, and we need to tune in, as you said, to what supports us, which is the planet. If we are a living entity living on a living entity, we need to find a way of direct communion with it.
People, just you mentioned the angelic, there's also the Devic, which is what we tend to forget about. The Devic kingdom.
Yeah.
The Devic kingdom has the wisdom.
And I believe that knowledge is the most necessary link for us to grow.
Through the crystalline structures.
With the crystalline structure, but if we come, the knowledge of what the plants did for us, I don't think they do it as effectively today, but comes from the ancient. You use this plant for this reason, and now we've got pharmaceutical department with all the side effects and not affecting the causes of our disease, but just playing havoc with the whole system.
Also, these remind me of cymatics or cymatics.
Yes.
And so that vibrational pattern is also, because we are vibration, as you say, we should be listening to the correct vibration, because that's what they hint at, and so it's getting that right too.
And you're reminding me something as well. I've watched this YouTube. When I got to the pattern, I took them out, but one of the pattern had like 4 arms, and I'm thinking, no, I'm getting this beautiful heart, and all of a sudden 4 arms, like what's happening? And all of a sudden I'm watching this YouTube, and we've got this talcum powder of sort, which we're pulsing with a certain frequency, and all of a sudden you've got bloop, 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 all those arms appearing out and, collapsing on itself. That frequency can create this effect.
Like Emoto.
Like you can run water upwards instead of down, like the gravity effect is, again, I don't believe gravity is what we are told gravity is. It's a frequency adjustment. And that's when we levitate. So, mainstream, I believe. I've left school very early. I did not finish my HEC. I'm very proud of it, to say. And everything I got myself was just from, you get interested, you just start and do it.
One of the famous inventors, I can't remember which to give credit to, but he said if he'd have gone to normal education and learnt that it couldn't be done, he wouldn't have just gone ahead and done it.
Well, that's what I've realized. I didn't have any blockages of preconceived ideas, and that gave me the full freedom of just being playful.